At 3:22 a.m., security footage captured someone standing in Marcus Webb's motel room, facing the corner, perfectly still, watching him sleep. Here's the problem. Marcus checked into room 14 alone. The door was locked from the inside. The window was sealed, and no one, absolutely no one, entered that room on camera. But when housekeeping opened the door the next morning, Marcus was gone. His car was still there, his wallet, his keys, his phone, still charging by the bed. The only thing missing was Marcus himself. Police reviewed every angle of the security footage. Parking lot, hallways, back exits, nothing. No one came in. No one went out. Except at 3:22 a.m., for exactly 4 minutes, a figure appeared in the corner of his locked room. A figure the cameras never tracked entering. A figure that shouldn't exist. The room was destroyed, furniture overturned, water on the floor, a perfect circle drawn in condensation on the bathroom mirror. And on that mirror, barely visible, were words traced in moisture. Is this real? Marcus Webb vanished from a locked room in the Nevada desert. The security footage recorded everything. And that's exactly why nothing makes sense. If you've ever felt watched in a place you knew you were alone, hit subscribe, because this story gets darker the deeper we go. Drop a comment and tell me, would you spend the night in room 14? The Desert Rose Motor Inn wasn't the kind of place people chose. It was the kind of place people ended up. Built in 1987 along a desolate stretch of Nevada highway between Tonopah and Goldfield, the motel serviced exactly one type of guest. Travelers who'd pushed their luck too far and needed a bed before exhaustion became dangerous. 23 rooms arranged in an L shape, a manager's office with bulletproof glass, a vending machine that hummed louder than the air conditioning. The neon sign out front had lost its O sometime in the early 2000s, so it just read, Desert RSE MTOR Inn, in flickering pink letters that barely competed with the stars overhead. It was the kind of anonymity people paid cash for. Marcus Webb was 34 years old in August 2018, a technical writer from Portland who'd spent the previous week visiting his sister in Phoenix. The trip hadn't gone well. Family tension, old arguments resurfacing, the kind of visit that leaves you more exhausted than the drive itself. He'd left Phoenix on the afternoon of August 3rd, planning to make it to Reno by midnight, but the desert heat and his own fatigue convinced him otherwise. When he saw the Desert Rose sign glowing against the black sky around 11:30 p.m., he made the decision that would change everything. He pulled off the highway. The manager on duty that night was a woman named Diane Cortez, 61, who'd been running the night desk for 9 years. She'd later tell investigators that Marcus seemed normal, tired, but normal. He paid cash for one night, didn't ask about Wi-Fi or breakfast or anything else. Just took the key to room 14 and walked out into the desert air. Diane watched him on the security monitor as he grabbed his duffel bag from the trunk, glanced briefly at the empty parking lot, and disappeared into his room. The door closed. The lights came on. Everything appeared routine. The Desert Rose had 6 security cameras, 1 covering the parking lot entrance, 1 pointed at the manager's office, 2 covering the exterior walkways, 1 monitoring the vending machine area, and 1 watching the back lot where the dumpsters sat. None covered the interiors of the rooms, of course. Privacy laws, liability concerns, and the basic fact that no one wanted to know what happened inside cheap motel rooms kept those spaces unmonitored. The cameras were old, the resolution poor, but they recorded continuously to a digital system that overwrote itself every 72 hours unless something flagged the footage for saving. That night, something would. Marcus's room was on the ground floor. Third from the end of the short arm of the L room 14 had the same layout as every other unit. A queen bed, a bathroom with a shower stall, a small table with 2 chairs, a TV bolted to the wall, and a window with blackout curtains that never quite closed all the way. The lock was a standard deadbolt. The door was solid core. The walls were concrete block painted beige. It wasn't luxurious, but it was secure, or should have been. At 11:47 p.m., the parking lot camera recorded Marcus entering room 14. The timestamp burned into the corner of the frame, white numbers on black background. At 11:51 p.m., his room light turned off, visible through the crack in the curtains. At 12:03 a.m., a truck passed on the highway, its headlights sweeping across the building. At 12:40 a.m., a coyote trotted through the far edge of the frame. The night settled into the deep, empty quiet that only desert darkness provides. Nothing moved. Nothing changed. Marcus's car sat undisturbed under the moth-circled lamppost, collecting dust that the wind pushed in gentle waves across the hood. What happened next wouldn't be discovered until morning, but it had already begun. Housekeeping arrived at the Desert Rose at 9 a.m. on August 4th. Rosa Martinez, the daytime cleaner, had worked the motel for 3 years and knew the rhythm. Most guests checked out early or slept late, and the ones who paid cash usually left without saying goodbye. Room 14's Do Not Disturb sign wasn't hanging on the door, which meant Rosa could proceed with cleaning. She knocked twice, called out housekeeping, and when no one answered, she used her master key. The door opened 6 inches before the security chain caught it. That was the first strange thing. Guests almost never used the chain. Most didn't even know the motels still had them. Rosa called through the gap. "Hello? Housekeeping? You still in there?" Silence. She could see a slice of the room through the opening, enough to notice the overturned lamp, the scattered bedding, the chair pushed against the wall at an odd angle. "Sir, you okay?" Still nothing. Rosa walked back to the office and told Diane, who was finishing her shift, about the chained door and the visible mess. Diane grabbed the phone and dialed room 14's internal line. It rang 8 times before going silent. No voicemail, just dead air. That was when Diane made the decision to cut the chain. She retrieved the bolt cutters from the maintenance closet, tools kept on hand for exactly these situations, though they were rarely needed, and returned with Rosa to room 14. Diane cut through the chain with 2 firm squeezes, and the door swung fully open. What they found inside made Rosa gasp and step backward. The room looked like something between a struggle and a search. The mattress was half off the bed frame, sheets tangled on the floor. Both pillows had been thrown across the room. The small table was flipped on its side. The chair sat in the far corner, positioned backward, facing the wall. The bathroom door hung open, and water had pooled on the tile floor, though the sink and shower were dry. Most disturbing was the mirror above the sink. Someone had drawn a perfect circle on it, using what appeared to be condensation or steam, a shape that shouldn't have lasted through the night in the dry desert air. But Marcus Webb was gone. His car was still in the parking lot, keys sitting on the nightstand, wallet beside them, phone plugged into the charger on the floor. His duffel bag lay open on the luggage rack, clothes still folded inside. Everything he'd brought was still there, except him. Diane immediately called the Nye County Sheriff's Office. Deputy Craig Hamilton arrived 40 minutes later and began the initial investigation that would eventually consume hundreds of hours and produce 0 solid answers. Hamilton documented the scene with photographs and notes. No blood, no signs of forced entry from the outside. The window was locked from the inside. The deadbolt had been engaged. The only way out was through the front door, and that required either the key, which was still inside, or someone opening it from within. Hamilton interviewed Diane and Rosa, established the timeline, and then did what would become the most important action of the entire investigation. He asked to see the security footage. Diane led him into the small office and pulled up the recordings on the old desktop computer connected to the camera system. They started with the parking lot camera, watching Marcus arrive, watching the quiet hours pass. Then Hamilton asked her to jump to the morning. They watched Rosa approach the door at 9:02 a.m. They watched her knock and try the key. They watched the entire sequence that led to the discovery. "Now go backward," Hamilton said. "Show me the overnight." Diane scrubbed backward through the timeline. 8 a.m., 7 a.m., 6 a.m., nothing. The parking lot remained still. Marcus's car never moved. No one approached room 14. She kept going. 5 a.m., 4 a.m. Then, at 3:22 a.m., she stopped. "Wait," she said. "Go back to that." Hamilton leaned closer to the screen. The image was grainy, the angle awkward, but there was no mistaking what they were seeing. Through the narrow gap in room 14's curtains, that same gap that had shown the light turning off at 11:51 p.m., there was now a clear view of the room's interior corner. And standing in that corner, perfectly still, was a human figure. Dark clothing, average height, no visible features in the low light, just standing there, facing the corner, like a child playing a game. But the angle was wrong. That corner wasn't visible from the bed. It wasn't visible from anywhere a person would naturally be in the room. You'd have to stand in a specific spot, doing nothing, facing the wall, to appear in that exact position. "Who is that?" Diane whispered. Hamilton didn't answer. He was already thinking about the locked door, the chained entrance, the missing guest, and the impossible figure that had no explanation for being there. Deputy Hamilton requested the full overnight footage be preserved immediately. Within 2 hours, Detective Sarah Mendez from the Nye County Major Case Unit arrived to take over what was quickly becoming more than a simple missing person case. Mendez was thorough and skeptical by nature, a 15-year veteran who'd worked everything from domestic disputes to the occasional homicide that cropped up in Nevada's rural counties. She watched the security footage 3 times before speaking. "Show me every camera," she said. "Every angle. I want to see if this person appears anywhere else." They went through the recordings systematically. The parking lot camera showed no vehicles arriving between Marcus's check-in and Rosa's discovery. The walkway cameras showed no one approaching or leaving any room during the overnight hours. The vending machine camera recorded only moths and blowing trash. The backlot camera captured nothing but a stray dog at 4:17 a.m. No one entered the motel office. No one crossed any monitored space. Yet somehow, impossibly, at 3:22 a.m., a figure appeared in room 14's corner, visible only because of that narrow gap in the curtains and the specific angle of the parking lot camera. Mendez made a list of possibilities. First, the figure was Marcus himself. But why would he stand facing the corner in the middle of the night? And where did he go afterward? Second, someone was already hiding in the room when Marcus checked in, but the room had been cleaned that morning, standard procedure. Or third, someone entered through a way not covered by cameras. Mendez walked the property's perimeter, checking for gaps, breaks, or alternate access points. The desert rose backed up to open desert, but the room's rear walls were solid except for small bathroom vents, too narrow for any adult to fit through. Fourth possibility, the footage was manipulated. But the timestamps were continuous, the recording showed no signs of editing, and Diane Cortez had no reason to fabricate evidence. By afternoon, Mendez had Marcus's car towed for processing and obtained permission to conduct a full forensic examination of room 14. The forensic team arrived from Las Vegas that evening, 3 technicians who specialized in crime scene analysis. They dusted for fingerprints, swabbed for DNA, used alternate light sources to check for biological evidence, and photographed every inch of the space. The results were confounding. Marcus's fingerprints were everywhere he should have been. The doorknob, the light switch, the bathroom sink, the table surface. But there was a second set of prints, partial, smudged, but distinct, on the chair that had been moved to the corner. Those prints didn't match Marcus. They didn't match any motel staff. When run through IAFIS, the FBI's fingerprint database, they produced no hits. Someone else had been in that room. Someone with no criminal record, no previous connection to law enforcement, no digital footprint in any system. The forensic team also found something else. Condensation residue on the bathroom mirror where the circle had been drawn. Chemical analysis showed it was consistent with human breath. Warm, moist air deliberately exhaled onto the cold glass surface. But the environmental conditions didn't support condensation lasting that long. The desert air was dry. The room's temperature stable, By all physical logic, any breath mark on the mirror should have evaporated within minutes. Yet the circle was still visible when housekeeping opened the door at 9:02 a.m., more than 9 hours after the figure appeared in the corner at 3:22 a.m. It was as if time itself had behaved differently inside room 14. Mendez released Marcus Webb's information to the media on August 5th. His face appeared on local news broadcasts and missing person websites. His sister told investigators that Marcus had been stressed during his visit, but not suicidal, not erratic, not exhibiting any behavior that suggested he'd disappear voluntarily. He'd texted her at 10:43 p.m. on August 3rd. Stopping for the night, too tired to push through, talk tomorrow. That was his last communication with anyone. And then Mendez noticed something in the footage that everyone had missed, something so subtle it only became apparent after her 7th viewing. At 3:22 a.m., when the figure appeared in the corner, there was a faint change in the light levels inside room 14. The darkness shifted, dimmed slightly, as if something were blocking an invisible light source. Mendez had the forensic team return to check for any source of illumination they'd missed. They found it. A small nightlight plugged into the bathroom outlet. It cast a soft glow that barely reached the main room. But if you stood in exactly the right position, in that corner, facing the wall, you'd cast a shadow visible through the curtain gap. The figure wasn't just standing there randomly. The figure was positioned with precision, deliberately making itself visible to the camera. Someone wanted to be seen. On August 8th, 4 days into the investigation, Detective Mendez received a phone call that reframed everything. A woman named Patricia Hollis called the tip line after seeing Marcus Webb's photo on the news. She lived in Carson City, about 200 miles northwest of the Desert Rose Motor Inn, and she had something strange to report. Marcus Webb had sent her a Facebook message at 4:17 a.m. on August 4th, nearly an hour after the figure appeared in the corner and hours before his disappearance was discovered. Mendez immediately requested access to Patricia's Facebook account and obtained a warrant for Marcus's digital records. What she found made no sense within the established timeline. The message was brief. Is this real? Attached was a photograph, a selfie taken in what appeared to be room 14. Marcus's face filled most of the frame, his expression somewhere between confusion and fear, his eyes wide in the dim light. But it was the background that made Mendez's pulse quicken. Behind Marcus, partially visible in the mirror's reflection, was the chair. And sitting in the chair, facing backward toward the corner, was a blurred figure. Not standing anymore. Sitting. The figure's features were indistinct, lost in the poor lighting and the phone's low-resolution camera. But the outline was unmistakable. Someone was in the room with him, someone he'd apparently felt compelled to photograph and send to a stranger he'd never met. Mendez interviewed Patricia Hollis in person. Patricia, 47, explained that she'd never communicated with Marcus Webb before that night. She'd received the message, found it bizarre, and assumed it was spam. She'd ignored it until seeing his face on the news. Mendez asked why Marcus would message her specifically. Patricia's answer opened another disturbing angle. 6 months earlier, Patricia's brother had died in a hiking accident near Tonopah, less than 30 miles from the Desert Rose. She'd posted about it extensively on Facebook, including the location details. Her profile was public. Anyone could have read those posts. The coincidence was too specific to ignore. The digital forensics team traced Marcus's phone activity. His device had connected to the Desert Rose's weak Wi-Fi signal at 11:52 p.m. It remained connected until 4:23 a.m. when it went offline, 6 minutes after sending the message to Patricia Hollis. During those hours, the phone's GPS placed it continuously inside room 14. It never moved. But the message to Patricia wasn't the only digital activity. At 2:47 a.m., Marcus had searched Google for sleep paralysis hallucinations. At 3:15 a.m., he'd searched someone in my room can't move. At 3:54 a.m., his browser history showed he'd visited a website about lucid dreaming techniques, and at 4:09 a.m., he'd attempted to call 911, but the call disconnected after 3 seconds. either canceled intentionally or dropped due to poor signal. The dispatch center had no record of receiving it. Mendez had the photo enhanced by a digital imaging specialist. The specialist could sharpen the image slightly, adjust the contrast, and clarify some details, but the figure in the chair remained frustratingly indistinct. What they could determine, the figure wore dark clothing, appeared to be adult-sized, and was positioned with its back to the camera, facing the corner wall. The specialist noted something else, something that made Mendez request a second opinion. The figure's reflection in the mirror didn't quite match the spatial geometry of where it should appear. It was as if the mirror was reflecting a person who was sitting slightly to the left of where they actually were, a parallax error that shouldn't exist unless the mirror itself was angled wrong, which it wasn't. On August 10th, Mendez returned to the Desert Rose with a different approach. She rented room 14 for the night. She brought a fellow detective, Thomas Kirby, as a witness, along with portable recording equipment. They were going to recreate Marcus's experience as closely as possible and see if the room itself held any environmental factors that could explain what happened. They checked in at 11:30 p.m., intentionally matching Marcus's timeline. They locked the door, engaged the chain, closed the curtains to the same narrow gap, and waited. At 2:15 a.m., Mendez noticed the temperature drop. It was subtle, maybe 3 or 4 degrees, but noticeable. Kirby confirmed it with a digital thermometer. The room had gone from 71 degrees to 67 degrees in less than 10 minutes. The air conditioning wasn't running, no drafts, no explanation. At 2:40 a.m., they heard a sound from the bathroom, a soft tap, like fingernails on glass. Mendez drew her service weapon and checked the bathroom. Empty. The mirror was fogged slightly, despite the dry air. She touched it. Cold. At 3:22 a.m., the exact time the figure had appeared in the security footage 1 week earlier, both detectives heard the same sound. The chair in the corner scraped slightly across the floor. Neither of them had touched it. The portable recorder captured the sound clearly, but the room's security camera, which they'd set up specifically to document their experiment, showed nothing. The chair didn't move on the recording. It only moved in reality. 3 weeks after Marcus Webb vanished, Detective Mendez received a break that came from the most unexpected source. A retired physics professor named Dr. Alan Tremaine, who'd read about the case in a paranormal investigation blog. Tremaine, 72, had spent 40 years studying quantum mechanics and space-time anomalies, theoretical work that never quite crossed into mainstream acceptance, but earned him quiet respect among niche academic circles. He contacted Mendez with a hypothesis that sounded absurd until she heard him explain it. "What if Marcus Webb didn't leave room 14?" Tremaine said. "What if he's still there? Just not in a way we can access." Mendez agreed to meet Tremaine at the Desert Rose on September 1st. He arrived with equipment: electromagnetic field detectors, infrared cameras, audio recording devices calibrated to frequencies beyond normal human hearing, and something he called a temporal displacement sensor, a custom-built device that measured inconsistencies in localized time flow. Mendez was skeptical, but she'd exhausted conventional investigative methods. She gave Tremaine permission to examine room 14 under supervision. What he found would become the most controversial aspect of the entire case. Tremaine's EMF detector registered normal readings throughout most of the room, background levels consistent with electrical wiring and the Earth's natural magnetic field. But in the corner where the figure had stood, the readings spiked dramatically. "This is significantly elevated," Tremaine said, showing Mendez the device's display. "We're looking at localized electromagnetic activity 10 times higher than the ambient level. There's no electrical source here that would explain this." He moved to the bathroom and checked the mirror where the condensation circle had appeared. Same spike. Then he activated his temporal displacement sensor, essentially an atomic clock that measured discrepancies in time passage. He placed it in the corner and waited. After 5 minutes, he checked the reading. "This is impossible," he muttered. According to the sensor, 5 minutes and 38 seconds had passed in the corner, while exactly 5 minutes had passed on Mendez's wristwatch and phone. 38 seconds of discrepancy. Tremaine ran the test again. Same result. Time was moving differently in that corner. Not dramatically, but measurably. If this reading is accurate, Tremaine explained, and if the effect was stronger on the night Marcus Webb stayed here, he could have experienced temporal dilation. Minutes might have felt like hours. Hours might have felt like days. If the effect was severe enough, he could have become dislocated from our time frame entirely. Mendez struggled with the concept. You're saying he's trapped in a different, dimension? Timeline? Tremaine shook his head. Not exactly. Think of it like a vinyl record. Most of the time, the needle follows the groove perfectly. That's our normal experience of time. But if there's a scratch, the needle can skip, can repeat, can even get stuck playing the same second over and over. That corner might be a scratch in space-time. Marcus could have stepped into a loop, a dilation, a pocket where time doesn't function normally. The figure you saw on the security footage might have been him, displaced, repeating, trying to signal for help. It was the most outlandish theory Mendez had encountered in her career, but it explained things no other hypothesis could. Why Marcus never appeared on camera leaving, why the condensation lasted impossibly long, why the room felt wrong, why time itself seemed elastic in that corner. Tremaine suggested bringing in university physicists to validate his findings, but Mendez knew how that would go. The case would become a circus. The motel would become a destination for paranormal tourists. And Marcus Webb, if he was somehow still experiencing consciousness in a temporal loop, would be no closer to rescue. Instead, Mendez made a decision that violated protocol, but honored her instinct. She closed the official investigation, marking Marcus Webb as a missing person with no leads, but she didn't close room 14. She convinced the motel's owner to keep it permanently unrented, telling him it was a potential crime scene that might need future examination. The owner agreed. The publicity had already damaged business, and one empty room was a small price for avoiding more attention. Mendez visited room 14 once a month for the next year, always at 3:22 a.m., always alone. She'd sit in the chair, face the corner, and speak into the darkness. "Marcus, if you can hear me, we're trying to find you. We haven't stopped." She never received an answer. But twice, once in October 2018 and once in March 2019, she noticed new marks on the bathroom mirror. Not condensation circles. Words. Faint. Barely visible. Written in what appeared to be finger-traced moisture. "Help," and "stuck." She photographed them, documented them, and consulted with Tremaine. "He's communicating," Tremaine said. "Somehow, he's still conscious, still trying to reach out. But the time dilation means what feels like minutes to us might be years to him. He could be experiencing decades in that loop, aging, deteriorating, trapped in a space that only occasionally aligns with our reality enough for him to leave messages." The thought was unbearable. Marcus Webb's car was eventually claimed by his sister and sold. His belongings were returned to his family. His apartment in Portland was cleaned out by friends who couldn't understand what happened. The official record states he disappeared from the Desert Rose Motor Inn on August 4th, 2018, and no evidence of foul play was found. The FBI's National Crime Information Center lists him as a missing person, age 34, last seen wearing a gray t-shirt and jeans. His case joins thousands of others, people who vanish from locked rooms, empty roads, and quiet moments when the universe seems to briefly forget they exist. But there are details that never made it into any official report. Details that Detective Mendez keeps in a private file she's never shown anyone except Dr. Tremaine. In December 2019, 16 months after Marcus disappeared, a guest staying in room 14 complained about hearing someone whispering in the walls. The whispers were in English, desperate, repeating the same phrases. "Can anyone hear me?" And "How long has it been?" The guest checked out early and never came back. In June 2020, housekeeping found handprints on the inside of room 14's window. not on the glass, but on the blackout curtain, as if someone had been pressing from inside the wall cavity itself, trying to push through to the room. The prints were too large to have been made by any child, too high to have been made by anyone standing on the floor. They were positioned as if someone was floating, or as if gravity no longer applied wherever they existed. The most disturbing incident came in February 2021. A couple staying in room 14 woke at 3:22 a.m. to find their phone's camera had activated on its own and taken 147 photographs in rapid succession. The photos showed nothing but darkness, except for one. Photo number 73 captured a face in the bathroom mirror. Not a reflection. A face pressed against the glass from the other side, mouth open, eyes wide, features distorted by the pressure and desperation of someone trapped behind a barrier that shouldn't exist. The couple fled the room immediately. When Mendez obtained copies of the photos, she had the face analyzed. Facial recognition software gave a 76% match to Marcus Webb, accounting for aging, distortion, and the poor image quality. It was him, or what he'd become. Dr. Tremaine developed a theory he published in an obscure physics journal in 2022. Certain locations on Earth, due to unknown geological or quantum factors, occasionally exhibit microscopic tears in space-time fabric. These tears don't create portals to other dimensions. They create temporal eddies, locations where time loops, stutters, or dilates unpredictably. A person caught in such an eddy experiences time normally from their perspective, but becomes desynchronized from the universe's main temporal flow. To them, minutes pass. To us, days or years pass. To them, they're still in the room, still trying to leave, still searching for the door. The eddy eventually dissipates. Quantum fluctuations don't remain stable indefinitely, but a person trapped inside might experience centuries before the anomaly releases them, if it ever does. Mendez doesn't know if she believes Tremaine's theory, but she knows what she experienced in room 14. She knows the temperature drops, the sounds, the sense of being watched by something that exists just outside perception. She knows Marcus Webb walked into that room and never walked out through any door the rest of us can access. And she knows that every night at 3:22 a.m., somewhere in the space between seconds, Marcus Webb might still be standing in that corner, facing the wall, trying to understand why no one can hear him screaming. The Desert Rose, Motor Inn, still operates. Room 14 still gets rented, usually to travelers who don't research the property's history and don't notice the faint handprints that occasionally appear on the curtains. The security camera system was upgraded in 2020, offering clearer footage, but the new cameras have never captured anything unusual. Whatever window of visibility existed in 2018 seems to have closed, or perhaps the figure learned that being seen doesn't mean being saved and stopped trying. Sarah Mendez is 61 now, 3 years into retirement, living in a small house outside Reno. She still thinks about Marcus Webb most nights. On August 3rd every year, Mendez drives to the Desert Rose. She parks in the same spot Marcus used. She stands outside room 14 at 11:47 p.m., the exact time he checked in, and she speaks into the desert air, hoping her words somehow reach him through whatever barrier separates his reality from ours. Marcus, we didn't forget you. We never stopped looking. If you're still in there, still fighting, please know that you mattered. Please know that someone cares. The wind carries her words across the empty parking lot, past the flickering neon sign, out into the darkness where the desert meets the stars. And in room 14, behind curtains that never quite close all the way, the corner remains empty, or appears empty, depending on when exactly you're looking at it, and whether your timeline happens to align with the one where Marcus Webb is still standing there, wondering why everyone pretends he's not. The case remains unsolved. The room remains open. And time continues moving forward for all of us, except for those unlucky few who found the places where it doesn't.